This is the Loupedeck Plus, an editing panel that speeds up your editing workflow. And this is an ordinary keyboard. May as well throw this in the trash. Well, actually don't. That's just a waste. Don't litter. Littering is bad. Okay, so Loupedeck reached out and said, hey, we got the Loupedeck Plus that I think you might like and might speed up your editing workflow. And I'm like, I'll be the judge of that. And so they sent the Loupedeck Plus to me, and I've been playing with it for a couple of weeks now, and they were right. So what the heck is this thing? Well, it's an editing panel with knobs and buttons that equate to some of the buttons and keyboard shortcuts on your keyboard. So for example, you have copy and paste. If you're color grading, there are wheels for like saturation and exposure. And really it's just meant to emulate what it's like to be editing on an actual editing panel in a production house. Now, would it fully replace your keyboard when it comes to editing? No. But it is an option to have if you want to speed up your workflow. But that's not the main reason why I love this thing. The main reason why I love using an editing panel like this is because it frees up my right hand from using the mouse so much. Now, if you're like me, you're probably editing pretty much most of the day. But probably the worst part about editing all day long is that you have to use a mouse for hours and hours and hours. And after a long day of editing, your hand tends to cramp up. And after years of editing, that pain, that cramping just kind of gets to you. Just gets to you. Now that's just for me. I'm not saying that's everyone. You could be totally fine. You could be a robot for all I know. But for me, having a solution now where I can just use knobs and sliders to do focus-driven tasks like color grading just reduces the amount of me having to use a mouse and having to point and click and drag all day long. Look at my hand. You did this to me. You did this to me. So I'm going to show you how I edit and color grade a video with the Loupedeck Plus, and you're going to see why this editing panel is so cool. Hi. All right, let's get started. So once the Loupedeck Plus is plugged in and you've downloaded the app, fire up the app and you'll see an interface that looks like this. And here you can see an exact replica of the Loupedeck Plus. And then over here on the top right, you can see that the device is the Loupedeck Plus. If you are using another product from Loupedeck, then simply choose a device that you're using. Right next to it is the application. And since we are using Premiere Pro, we're going to select Premiere Pro. But as you can see here, there are other apps that you can use like After Effects, Audition, Aurora, Capture One, Final Cut Pro, Lightroom, and Photoshop. But for now, we're just going to focus on Premiere Pro. And that's pretty much it if you want to get started. But the cool thing about this interface is that you get to assign custom buttons, which is a really cool way to speed up your workflow. So say for example, I have my L1, L2, and L3 buttons. We'll simply click on one of those buttons. And as you can see here, this is the menu where you can assign certain features to custom buttons. Here you can see the rolling edit tool assigned to L1, link is assigned to L2, and pen tool is assigned to L3. We're going to change all three of those starting with L1. To the right are different features that you can assign to each custom button, and so you can either search through it through these folders, or you can look up a specific feature in the search bar up here. But let's just go through the different options over here and just pick a feature that I use often and assign that to L1. Let's go ahead and click on Clip Video Options, and oh, here we go. This is Add Frame Hold, and basically what that does is that it takes the current frame of a video clip and turns it into a freeze frame. And so let's just assign that to L1. And in order to do that, simply just click on L1 and then click on Add Frame Hold, and boom, there you go. Now I've assigned Add Frame Hold to L1. Let's go ahead and do the same thing to L2 and L3. For L2, let's see, what's another feature that I like using quite often? Okay. Let's go ahead and actually search for it. And I like using this feature a lot. I like using the enable feature because sometimes I like disabling a clip and enabling it depending on what I'm doing. And so if I just assign it to L2, it'll just speed up my workflow. And so let's go ahead and click on L2. And then over here, click on enable. And now I change my L2 custom button to enable. And last but not least, L3. And the feature that I want to assign to L3 is, actually, let's do this. Nest. I nest a lot of my clips quite often, and so it kind of makes sense to assign that to a custom button. And so click on L3, click on Nest, boom. And now I have 3 custom buttons. Obviously, you can assign more buttons to do whatever you want, but let's just stick to these 3 for now. And once you're done, click Close, and now you're ready to edit. So we're just going to do some basic editing with the Loupedeck Plus, and we're going to try out our custom buttons that we assigned from earlier so that you can see how much easier it is to edit with a panel like this. That reminds me, there's this one time I went to the store Okay, so I'm just gonna pick a random clip. Let's go back to the beginning of the timeline over here, and let's go ahead and just clear the in and out, because what I want to do is I want to show you how to select in and out points from the Loupedeck Plus. And so let's go ahead and start right there. And if I want to select my first in point, I just click on C1, which is in the center of the editing panel. And now you see on the screen, I've set my in point. So let's go ahead and play the clip so I can determine where my out point will be. Okay, so say about there, right when he looks down. To set your out point, simply press on C4. And boom, now you've made your selection from that clip. And to insert that selection onto your timeline, simply press on C5, and boom, now your clip is on the timeline. Now, confession, the insert feature was not assigned to C5, it was actually assigned to something else. And so I just made another custom button where C5 is now insert. Let's go ahead and do another clip. Let's click on this guy over here. And we have Cody. By the way, if you're not following Cody Blue, then go ahead and follow him right now. He's a good friend of mine, and so he's my Sony homie. Let's go ahead and make our ins and out points from this clip. Ooh, I like that little flare. Let's go ahead and maybe have our in right about there, so C3. And if you want to zoom in on your selection, you can actually use D1 and turn the dial, and that'll zoom in on your selection. So if you want to be really precise on your out point, then you can use that feature. So probably about there. Yeah, that's a cool shot. Cody, you're so cool. All right, so C4, that'll be my out. I like that. C5, boom, I've inserted that selection onto my timeline. Okay, so far, pretty dang easy. Let's just use those two clips for now so that we can move on to the next thing. And let's go ahead and zoom in on the timeline. So I'm gonna use the D1 button and that'll zoom in. Perfect, very cool. So let's go ahead and test out our custom buttons that we assigned earlier. If you remember, adding a frame hold was assigned to L1. And basically what that does is that it turns whatever clip that you're on into a freeze frame. So for example, let's do a clip of Cody right there. Let's just say for example. And you know what? Let's go ahead and zoom in on the timeline even more so that you can see what's happening. Okay, so now I'm gonna press L1 and check out what it does to the clip. And there you go, that is a frame hold, and so a really cool feature that I like using pretty often. But what about this clip in itself? I mean, you hear me talking in the frame and it's slow motion. And as much as that sounds like a cool dinosaur, I don't want that audio. And so what we want to do is disable that clip. And if you remember, we've assigned the disable feature to L2. So go ahead and click on our audio clip and press L2 to disable. Now it's disabled. And to enable that clip again, to simply press L2, and now the audio is enabled. Super cool. But what if I want to nest several clips together? I mean, it's pretty easy to do with the mouse itself. Just highlight whatever clip you want, right click and select nest, or you can just select whatever clips that you want, press L3 because we've assigned nest to L3, and now we've created a nest. Pretty cool. And that's it. That's some of the basic features when it comes to editing. Obviously, you can do a whole lot more to it, but I just wanted to show you how easy it is to use an editing panel like this. But now we're going to switch gears and color grade our footage because this is where the Loupedeck Plus really shines. That's kind of like the time when I went Christmas shopping to get some Christmas gifts, and the people were like, "What are you doing? Christmas was yesterday." Okay, so now let's go ahead and start color grading. So let's go ahead and click on the clip that you want to color grade. And in this panel over here, let's click on Effects Controls because I want to show you what's going to show up in this box over here. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with the basics, and let's just start with exposure. And you can find the exposure dial on the Loupedeck Plus right over here. And if I turn it to the right, it's going to increase exposure just like so. And the moment I start adjusting, the Lumetri panel automatically shows up on my clip. So let's go ahead and expand the basic correction so that you can see those values change. All right, so let's go ahead and increase the exposure again. And now you see the values on the exposure increase. I'm going to decrease it. Let's go ahead and lower the contrast. And you can see in the other panel, the value of the contrast is decreasing. And let's go ahead and go to temperature and make the scene colder. Looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and increase saturation. Yeah, that's looking really nice. And let's see, maybe bring up the highlights. Or maybe bring down the highlights and bring up the whites. There we go. And let's go ahead and lower the shadows. Now it's looking really good. And that's it, pretty dang easy. And you can see those values change as I edit in real time with the Loupedeck Plus. So pretty cool. Let's go ahead and go to the next clip. We got our boy Cody Blue. Let's go ahead and use this section. And same deal, let's go ahead and start with exposure. I'm gonna lower the exposure, and you know what? I'm gonna open up the basic correction box so that you can see those values. Let's go ahead and warm up the scene. So let's go to temperature and let's warm it up. That's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and increase contrast actually. Nice. Maybe bring up the shadows. Increase vibrance. Saturation. Looking pretty good. Let's bring up the whites overall. And yeah, I'm liking it. And I gotta say, it's way easier doing it this way than having to use the mouse so much. I find it way easier to color grade this way. And that looks pretty dang good. But let's go ahead and use another clip that's a bit more challenging. Let's go ahead and click on this. Here we go. This is our downtown LA shoot. So same deal from before. Let's go ahead and make our in and out points. So C3 for in. Let's go fast forward and right there. That will be our out point. Let's go ahead and go to another point in our timeline. Press C5 to insert the clip, and boom, your clip is there. All right, and let's go to our effects control, and let's go ahead and start adjusting. Now, if I remember, this was shot in S-Log3 on the A6300, so it's gonna be a little more challenging to color grade, but really easy to do on the Loupedeck Plus. Okay, let's go ahead and increase exposure. You know what? And let's go ahead and open up our basic correction box so that we can see our values. And let's increase contrast and lower the blacks. Let's go ahead and increase saturation. I want to bring some color back. Looks pretty good. Let's warm up the scene. All right, bring down the shadows. Increase contrast. There we go. Looking really good, guys. And let's lower our highlights. Let's go and make some finer adjustments. Looking really good. Oh, love it. Super, super cool and super easy to do. And honestly, a lot more fun color grading this way versus having to rely on your mouse. And that's it. That's pretty much how you color grade with the Loupedeck Plus. Obviously, you can do a lot more to it. You can assign certain buttons that'll match your workflow. But just like the editing, I wanted to show you how easy it is to color grade with an editing panel like the Loupedeck Plus. That reminds me of the time when I was hanging out with Jason Vong, and some people saw us and they're like, hey. Okay, so some pros and cons. Pros, I love how it sped up my workflow when it comes to editing and color grading. And if I'm honest, I kind of do prefer editing with a keyboard. I'm just used to all my keyboard shortcuts. But when it comes to color grading, that's when the Loupedeck Plus really shines. I mean, the fact that you can use physical buttons and knobs and sliders and dials makes it a lot easier to make precise adjustments when it comes to color correcting and color grading versus having to rely on the click and drag technique with a mouse. And then when you accidentally lift up your mouse, your values change and you're like, oh! But I love that this is an option for me when it comes to color correcting and color grading. Just makes my life a lot easier. And as far as cons goes, really, it's just the time it takes to get used to editing with a panel like this. I mean, it is a learning curve, I'll be honest, and it even took me a while to get used to it. But like with anything else, the more you use a certain piece of gear, the better you'll get at it. And after having this for several weeks now, I can't imagine color grading any other way than with an editing panel like the Loupedeck Plus. So there you go, that is the Loupedeck Plus, a solution to edit your videos, but really shines when it comes to color correcting and color grading. Huge thanks to Loupedeck for sponsoring this video, and if you want to check out the Loupedeck Plus for yourself, the link will be in the description below. Alright guys, well that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Reminder, don't throw away your keyboards in the trash. That's a waste. Rather, like, subscribe, hit the bell buttons down below, and I'll see you in the next one. That's almost similar to the time that I was in New York, and I was walking in New York and I was like, hey, does anyone know where the pizza is? That reminds me, there's this one time I was driving, right? And there was a red light. There was a guy next to me. He wanted to race. I went to the store the other day, right? I wanted to get some potato chips, and there weren't any potato chips. And the guys were like, sorry, no potato chips. It's like that one time when I was at that one party, and Phil, he wanted to say, "Hey man, you want a drink?" And I was like, "No,